Good day to all, and welcome to Keeping It Real with Mary and Friends. I hope all of you are having a fantastic weekend. Um, we just had a wonderful um, opening for the Freedom Park at Golden Grove yesterday, and it was quite interesting. All the display of the cultural parts of Barbados, and we saw some faces we haven't seen for a little while. Sister Spencer Cross, who had a good part in building up on what they were presenting to us yesterday, as well as we had a Frenchman who was part of the display that went on with the wall. I thought that was quite interesting. It's I don't remember the name of it. It's so much to keep in your mind here. Um, I think even Sir Patterson Cheltenham, his family name is on the wall. So I'm sure most of you were able to receive the Sunday Sun, the Nation Sunday Sun, would see that there's quite a lot to read. It was kind of heavy today. Today I have a very special guest. Funny enough, we go a little ways back, Mr. Shawn Clarke. And he is an intriguing individual who touches on a subject that's very touchy. And I find that overseas you find a lot of people talking about it, and it has to do with mental health. He is the CEO of the Supreme Counselling for Personal Development. And I'm so happy to have him on the show with us today. And we're going to be able to touch on mental health during this pandemic. Before we bring him on, I noticed something that was quite prevalent. The Transport Authority, for those individuals who use the public transport that's situated along Constitution River, the Transport Authority, which is to advise the public of the implementation of new cross-country route, Old Town to Bridgetown, to assist with growing demands of the traveling public. That's fantastic. They've also added three other new routes, spikes down to Bathsheba, the City Circle, we all know that the Transport Board already offers that, and Yorkshire. So those four routes, if you refer to the Sunday Sun at page 31A, it gives you those details, and I'm very happy to hear that they're expanding in areas that do have problems with people getting around on the island. So just remember that. And something that's hitting us here in Barbados, and we're observing what's happening, and that's a new virus variant that's now found in Britain. But of course, the origination is from South Africa, or their West Indies women team are on their way back home. They did qualify for the ICC World Cup for next year. However, most of the teams that they would have been playing with, especially the Sri Lankan team, six members were tested positive, and without having to endanger the other team players, they have decided to forego the continuation of those games, and all of the respective countries are on their way home. Sad, but we know it's for the protection of our teams, and we would love to see them home safely. The manager, Courtney Walsh, said that it was the best decision, although it's very saddening to see them coming home. So, without further ado, I would like to bring on my friend Shawn to join us, and we're going to touch on him. Welcome.
Hi, how are you doing? It's so nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
You're welcome. Thank you. Um, how was your day going thus far?
First first, it is going relatively well. Usually I will get up and I'll do the things that I need to do. I'm always on call. My job means that there's no downtime. Wherever I go, my cell phone is with me. I'm answering calls with persons who may have some kind of distress, whether it be suicidal thoughts, whether they just, somebody to offer a listening ear. So I'm basically always on the job.
Yes, yes. And I can understand you're still giving up service 24/7. Yes.
Yes.
Um, with regards to yourself, now I alluded to the fact that we met many years ago, but we like to touch on the history of our guests. Note the word history.
It's true.
That being where we started off, but I give the impression to everyone about the little boy in the khaki pants. And people go, what? No, we want to know a little bit about Shawn, and it would afford you the opportunity to enlighten others of how and where you started. So, where did we go to school?
Well, I went to school at St. James Secondary School. I'm very, very proud past student of that school. Wherever I go in the world, I shout it out loud that I am a product of the St. James Secondary School. That's where I got my foundation. The teachers there really helped me to develop into the person I am today.
That is fantastic. Now, if I'm correct, it's now called Frederick Smith
Frederick Smith
Secondary. I have to
Secondary.
take off the Sir.
Yes.
I have to keep remembering to take the Sir. Frederick Smith. How did you see that in terms of the school you went to, the naming of the school?
Well, to be quite frank and to be quite honest with you, I always say I went to school at St. James Secondary School. I
Yes.
was never a student of the Frederick Smith Secondary School. I respect the fact, I respect the name change, I respect what Sir Smith would have done for us.
Hmm.
But I went to school at St. James Secondary School. I'm a
Hmm.
proud product of the St. James Secondary School.
Yes. And I find some people find it difficult to call it by the new name because I know in conversation with some people, we would say, oh, we went to school at the Garrison. And then they would say, um, Garrison. Where
Grand
is
City.
that?
Yes.
Because everybody knows it now as Green Steely. I mean, the
Yes.
younger folks. So when you hear the
Yes.
younger folks say Green and Steely, now we would go, what? Where's that? So, you know, and it's reminiscent of what we did and where we went to and how we did things. So, if we had to take the road down memory lane, we would talk about, oh, when we went to school, we had to be on time, fingers used to be checked, school bags used to be checked, all these different things about going to school from primary to secondary. So,
Yes.
it's quite interesting when we go to these schools where some of them have now been renamed, and we sit back and say, wow, I remember I only know it as St. James Secondary, or I only know it as the Garrison or St. Lucie Secondary. So, what I think for you, it would be filled with memories
Yes.
when you talk about St. James Secondary. Did you have a mentor at your school, the old school?
Uh, I do a lot of work at Frederick Smith Secondary. I started to Supreme Counselling in 2009.
Hmm.
And the first school that I contacted to work with is St. James Secondary, Frederick Smith Secondary School. I always made a commitment to the school and I maintain that commitment that whatever I am doing to assist with the personal and the professional development of our young people, that school must be number one on my
Hmm.
list.
Yeah.
So I continue to work with the school, I continue to give of my time to the school, and I will continue to serve the school as long as I'm able to.
Wonderful. I commend you on that. What would you say made you go into counseling? How did that journey take you from school? Did you go on to university? Did you decide to sit down and do a course? How did you get involved with mental health and trying to deal with the mind? Really?
My first love uh, was law. I really wanted to become a lawyer,
Hmm.
but somewhere along the line that changed. Growing up, I was always in these groups. I always found myself as president of one youth organization or the other. I served as the president of the first National Youth Forum in Barbados back then.
Mm-hmm.
I was involved in summer day camp. I started out as a deputy director, and then I went, to the director of the camp. So I was always involved in working with young people. I was always involved in giving advice, and I found then that what, this is my niche. This is where I really can make a difference. So it changed then from law to sociology, psychology, and I made that my field of choice, that my
Mm-hmm.
career of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I did because I was able then to draw on all of my experience from
Mm-hmm.
being involved in youth organizations, from speaking at youth symposiums and seminars and so on. And that assisted me then to be ready.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The with the program, you, as you said, you started in 2009. So when you started and you touched on the students from St. James Secondary, where else did you continue to reach out in terms of counseling?
Well, I started with St. James Secondary.
Mm-hmm.
I also reached out to Princess Margaret
Mm-hmm.
Secondary and Parkinson Memorial. Those were the three schools that I started working with. Back then, we had an enrollment, I think, of 30 students, 10 per school.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I'm happy to say we now work with six secondary schools directly, and I have over 1,500 children directly in my care that I have to their personal development on almost a daily basis. But yes, those were the three schools, and all three of them are still with me today.
What sort of cases do you come across with these young individuals? Just to
I
name
say
a
it
few.
all. I say it all. Low self-esteem,
Mm-hmm.
and that I think is the catalyst for a lot of other things that they go through. A lot of young people not believing in itself, not believing in their ability to get things done. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
young people, unfortunately, coming from homes where they hear nothing but the negative.
Mm-hmm.
They hear what they cannot do in opposed to what they can do. So we find a lot of young people with low self-esteem. We
Mm-hmm.
find a lot of young people who, according to young people, go from 1 to 100 real quick.
Mm-hmm.
They get angry. And I say to them, there's nothing wrong with getting angry. Anger is an emotion like love or any other emotion. It is what you do when you get angry. So you deal with that anger. So that we have self-esteem, we have a lot of young people with anger issues, uh, conflict resolution, a lot of them as well, they're depressed. We've got a lot of young people suffering with depression,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. A lot of them, especially since the advent of COVID-19, a lot of young people with suicidal thoughts, what
Mm.
we call suicidal ideations, and unfortunately suicidal attempts as
Oh, there. Wow. So,
well.
what gender is there a gender that's affected more than the other, or are they in equal numbers? Meaning, do you get more females or males?
Initially, we had more males, but we
Mm.
find out that it started to even out. There was a kind of an equilibrium where the females started to catch up with the males. And in terms of, for example, aggression, we have more females now coming to us with aggression, even more so than males. But as it pertains to suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideations, unfortunately, males that seem to be affecting our young men more so than our females.
Now, my problem with young women, especially the teenage, when they're teenagers, 13 and onwards, and you alluded to the point where it's the home environment. We do have some children who may not have come from the right side of the blanket, but they're doing pretty good. They see the goal at the end of the street. And is it that, there's a Bayesian term, the apple don't fall too far from the tree, where most of the households are female led, sad to say, and having them being led by more females, it's like a domino effect. The same thing that happened to them before continues to happen to the next one. So generally, if you're looking at scenarios that are happening in society today, what I assume you're looking at with all the problems that you may encounter to have to counsel, especially with low self esteem, do you think that social media plays a very detrimental part as well?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Especially when it comes to cyberbullying. We have a lot of young people, especially now that we have school online 100%.
Well,
Now
Sean,
we're seeing an increase. Mhm.
explain to those who don't know what cyberbullying is. You and I
Okay,
would. There are
so
people that don't understand what cyberbullying is.
yes, so you have cyberbullying or you have traditional bullying. When you look at traditional bullying, is direct bullying in terms of the hitting, the kicking, the taunting, the name calling, the teasing, and so on.
Hmm.
Cyberbullying is
Hmm.
the use of social media, whether it
Hmm.
be Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, IG, what have you,
Hmm.
and sending mean, hurtful, or demeaning messages or images
Hmm.
online to hurt a person.
Hmm. Hmm. So
And
with
we've seen an increase in
yeah.
cyberbullying. We've seen an increase of persons saying mean and hurtful things for others. We have a situation where some young people refuse to turn their camera on during class time because they are embarrassed with the condition of their homes and knowing or believing that if their friends get to see or what my house looks like,
Hmm.
then they're going to tease me, they're going to taunt me, I'm going to be bullied. So there's so many things that we have to look at. So many things that can affect the mental health of our young people that
Hmm.
I don't think we are zeroing in on as we should to really remedy these things to save our young people from themselves.
Do you think parents should have more control over social media with the children?
I really think so. It should not be a free for all. A child should not be able to go online at any time to do whatever they want to do, however they want to do it. It should be supervised, and there are devices out there that parents can look into that they can command what is happening online, that they can see what their children are doing. They can go back in their history and they can see the different websites and so on that the young people are visiting. I think that parents need to be more proactive. And I'm not saying that parents don't know because I know there are hundreds of parents out there that are very proactive when it comes to this. But I don't think it's enough parents showing that interest. And let us be real and let us be fair to some of the parents. Some of the parents don't even know how to turn the computer on. So,
That's
you
true.
know, we have to be real and we have to be fair. But it means then that you need to learn. You need to go and do a course. You need to have the same child sit down and teach you your way around the computer. Because as a parent, ignorance should not be an excuse.
I totally agree with that comment. Now, when we talk about, I'm going to be a little bit longer on social media because we talked about the bullying aspect, and parents need to be attentive and understand the uses of all these different devices. Now, I'm not a fan of it because I realize parents earlier, I think me and you might have been 20, parents were giving children cell phones. And I was in shock. My granny wouldn't give me no cell phone. So forget that. Furthermore, a cell phone was like a little box with music coming from it. She didn't know how to use it.
Mhm.
So forget that. And as I got older, even with my daughter, I was not in vogue for a cell phone.
Mhm.
She got one for her Christmas from a relative. And of course, we have control of that because we don't think at 11 you need a cell phone. You need to
Mhm.
call us. I will pay the bill or I will get the credit. You call me or daddy. no problem. So,
Mhm.
and I have it right here because my phone is dead. So I have that one. But things like TikTok, you call IG, and I can't remember what the other ones are that they have. Some of the things I find that are dangerous. And I heard this topic come up on a show. I think they call it, um, it's not sexting. Sexting is messaging, but it's another
Mhm.
word that they use. I'm frightened for these young boys and girls, not just girls. We know that it is somewhat prevalent in young teenage girls and how they get caught up in the quote unquote limelight of visually expressing themselves through social media. Um, to me, it's a difficult thing to try to get those young children to understand that it's not all about image. And is it, for a better word, that they're sourcing love? Are they looking for love from that medium?
In some cases, yes. Uh, in other cases, you have a situation where parents wait until children get a certain age, then to start to teach certain values, then to start to give certain like lessons. And again, I will use the word some parents are not as proactive as they should.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to be extremely real, in our time, well, in your time, because I'm not going to age myself,
Be careful.
in your time, you had MySpace, and we had other things that are equivalent to the same TikTok and the same IG and so on now.
I don't even know
But
my face.
wow,
I think my sister had something on MySpace, but I never had MySpace, so I don't even know what it
okay.
is. So carry on.
But we had parents that taught us from very early what not to do,
Hmm.
how not to react. You
Hmm.
don't go on these things and expose yourself.
Yeah.
So we knew if we did A, B, C, and D would have been the consequences.
Hmm.
And we did not want to face those consequences. So we
Hmm.
kept in line. So I
Yes.
think a lot of parents now are waiting until the children get in the situation then to discuss the situation. We need to have family meetings. We need to have family discussions. Get scenarios. You don't have to wait until something happens. You read the newspaper, you listen to the news, and you pick up on a topic and you see, listen, we are going to discuss this topic today.
Yeah.
What would you do if you find yourself in this situation? How would you handle that situation? So that
Hmm.
our young people have a mental image on how to deal with these situations when they come up. You know what?
Hmm.
I had a discussion with Daddy about this before. So I have an idea now how to deal with it.
Yeah.
How our young people have that level of pride in themselves to know that my body is my temple and I'm not going to show it to the world. It is
Yeah.
not a newspaper. It is not out there to be exposed.
Hmm.
Teach our young people about values. And if you teach your child about values, you don't necessarily then need to say, don't do A, don't do B, don't do C, don't do D. Because you've taught your values. So I know that to do this is against my value system. To do that is against my belief. It's against my family's belief. So I'm not going to do it. So it
Well,
starts with conversation. It starts with discussion. It
yes.
starts with families being able to sit down and to discuss things. It starts with parents saying to your child, come and discuss anything with me
Hmm.
and be open-minded about it.
But Sean, we have to go back, and as you said, we keep it ourselves young. In our time, people used to talk about the birds and the bees,
Mhm.
or sometimes they never used to talk about it at all. And you had to learn from school or friend or anything such like. Um, I I must commend children who were brought up by their fathers. I was brought up by my dad and my grandmother. So when my dad got to the birds and the bees, it wasn't about the bushes. He was straight up. And I was
Mhm.
like, what? So when you have those, as you said, conversations with your
Mhm.
children, you're like, wow, things have changed. For example, when you have young children going to nursery, I think it is, children come home talking about penis and vagina.
Mhm.
Back in the days, it used to be the cookie and something else, you know. So
Yes.
you have to teach children now to, as you say, respect their bodies, yes, and at the same time identify themselves and know who they are,
Mhm.
which is a valid point. Um,
Yes.
you and I grew up in that era where things might have been a bit shadowed, but we learned and we understood what it was. But what's the problem? Well, let me pull back the question a different way. Haven't had the issues during our time where you and I might have been 18, 19, and underneath that, going to school, we've had children who would have had teenage pregnancy. And to me, I think the mother needs counseling or the father needs counseling. Somebody needs counseling. There were scenarios where there were incidences where um, one or two kids in my year might have had a baby, 13, 14. And only as I got older, I understood that that was called statutory rape.
Great.
Rape,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
So, who in their right mind would take their daughter to QEH for prenatal care with a 13, 14, 15-year old? Now, I just being frank and keeping it real.
Mhm.
Who needs counseling there? Because nobody ain't getting locked up now. Nobody. No, I'm just keeping it serious.
Mhm. Yes.
You
Yes.
don't see or hear people get locked up apart from two cases that came up last year.
Mhm.
An 11-year-old who turned 12. As an individual, a professional such as yourself, if you have to sit in the seat of the counselor or this 13, 14-year or 11-year-old, how would you treat something like that?
Well, first and foremost, you have to. I would make the person comfortable, and I will try to reassure the 30-year-old child that uh, you've made a mistake. This, however, is not the end of your life. This will not determine who you can be. That there are things now that you can do to still live a full life. You can still get an education. You can still, you are still a person of worth. I find one of the things that parents do that I keep on telling them about. I would say to that child, or I would ask the parent to say to that child if it comes up to that, I'm disappointed in the choice you made. I'm not disappointed in you. And there's a difference. I'm disappointed in the choice that you made. I'm disappointed in the situation. I am
Mm-hmm,
disappointed in what happened. I am upset
mm,
with what happened. I'm upset with the situation.
mm-hmm,
I'm not necessarily disappointed or upset with you.
mm-hmm,
Because at 11 years old, there will have to be something fundamentally wrong. And this is now where family therapy comes into play, where you
mm,
bring in the parents of the child, where you bring in the others in the household. It cannot be an individual thing where you just sit and look at the child. An 11-year-old child who is impregnated, you have to investigate what is happening in that household.
yeah,
You bring in the parents, you have counseling sessions with the parents to teach them how to deal with the child. Some of them may need parenting skills. Some of them will need to know how to work with your child from here on in, how to
mm-hmm,
make the decisions that need to be made, the tough decisions that need to be made, and how to be more vigilant as a
mm-hmm.
parent.
Right, right, right,
But I
right.
will reassure the child that this is not the end all.
Yeah.
Sometimes
So,
if you refuse to do that, we find that a lot of children, for example, both females and males who would have been molested at a young age,
mm-hmm,
one or two things happen.
mm-hmm,
They either become very promiscuous,
Mm.
or they get involved in same-sex relationships.
Mhm.
And we've seen this across the board for both male and females.
I think your response would help somebody else to think and understand that you were really looking at the victim,
Yes.
really the victim. But what about the parent now? You've dealt with the victim. What about the parent? And as I said, the child is under the age. Is it that the parent need, you said they need some sort of parenting class. But suppose that wasn't the only child that had this scenario. Suppose they had two girls like that. Because you know they have stories where mothers,
Yes.
quote unquote, are prostituting their children.
Mhm.
Sometimes even fathers are prostituting their children. If we have to go back again, I think there was a scenario where a guy came from the UK, had to try to get his children away from the mother because she was doing
Yes.
drugs and all kind of things. I mean, what? How would the child recover from something like that? How would the father himself recover? Because he was affected very
Yeah.
badly.
And that's why that's why I said that you have to do some kind of investigation. You have to go to that household, whether it be through social workers, whether it be through the child care board. You have to go to the household to find out what it is that not only one but two of your daughters of such a young age is
Mm-hmm.
impacted. Is it that you're prosecuting, your one child for financial gain? What is happening? It is only after you've done that investigation. Because in the field of psychology, in the field of sociology and so on, we cannot go based on a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
We have to
Mm-hmm.
investigate. We have
Yes.
to do our research.
Mm-hmm.
We have and then come up with our findings. It is
Mm-hmm.
only then that we can recommend the course of action. So
Yes.
you go and you investigate in a case where, unfortunately, the children will have to be taken from the household and put in government care, or if there's a family member that are responsible enough, financially able to take on the responsibility of rearing those children, you might have to separate the child from the parent. And to be quite frank, if you find out in your investigation that the parent is the culprit, or this is something that the parent knew about, this is something that the parent allowed to happen, then that parent should face the law courts and they not necessarily a fine, but that parent should occupy a little room in St. Philip's for a bit.
Ah, throw away the key.
So, because what you're doing, you are destroying a life that you should be preserving.
That's
You are
right.
destroying a life that you should be protecting. And then what happens then if that child grows up and then it becomes a cycle and then you have to work so hard to break that cycle?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to be frank, then if the parent is at fault, if the parent is guilty, the parent is responsible for that child um, under 18 years old, then let that parent face the law courts.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And it would be nice to see cases that people have been reprimanded for sexually abusing children so young. I mean, the other ones have gone somewhat quiet, so we would leave that as it is there for the time being
I
because
think
we
one of the
know it is
problems
still.
that we face, I think one problem we face in Barbados to an extent is
Mhm.
that in some cases, then you will have the perpetrator paying the parent off. And the
Ah,
parent decided, okay, let me forget about it. But you get
how do
some
we
money,
forget about that?
but yeah, because you got some money, so you get that and all. But the money is not dealing with the psychological scars. The money is not going to address the mental illness that your child is is going to go through. The money is not going to deal or address the personality disorder that your child could face as he goes into young to older adolescence or young adulthood. You know, so when we look at it one way, or And sometimes the excuse is, well, I want to put him through that, or I want to put she through that. I want it to be repeating the same over and over again. But so you get paid off, and then you don't get the psychological help that is needed, that intervention that is needed to try to put that child back in the frame of mind or the
Mhm.
space that that child needs to be to become a productive citizen of the society.
Wow, you got a lot of work, Sean. That's a lot of work. That's a mouthful. And I think not only yourself, those who are within the same profession do have a task at hand with what's happening in society. Because sad to say that we have adults that contribute to the scenarios that you have played out for us today. Um,
Yes.
the mental aspect now, as you spoke of with regards to that scenario, and you have stated that some young individuals have at some point tried to or made the attempt of suicide with the pandemic on. Have you had lots of cases with this in regards to what's happening now with the pandemic?
We've had an increase in
Wow.
cases. Yes, we've had an increase in cases of young people under 18 years old. I've seen quite a few young people between the ages of 10 and 17, with the
Oh
youngest
no.
being 10, yes, with suicidal thoughts, with suicidal ideations, a few suicidal attempts. We would have referred a number of young people to the assessment unit and psychiatric hospital to get an evaluation done to see, what is happening with these young people. It is so much that Supreme Counselling is now in the process of developing or creating a, a Supreme Youth Suicide Prevention Hotline so that our
Mm,
young people can get access to some person at any hour of the day or any hour of the night. The reality is that for the very first time in the lives of these young people, in our lives as well, we are told not by our parents, but
mhm,
we are told by the authorities that when 9 o'clock you have to be off the street.
mhm,
We are told that we cannot go to school and socialize with our friends.
mhm,
We are told that we cannot hug our best friend.
mhm,
We've been prepared for graduation for the past 5 years, and then because of a pandemic, you cannot have graduation.
mhm,
I'm an athlete, and I've been practicing for inter-school sports because I
mhm.
have this dream of standing on the podium as number one.
Yeah.
And then up comes the pandemic and and sweep that dream from under my feet. I'm being
Mhm,
told I cannot go in the streets and play football with my friends. I'm being told I cannot go and visit grandmom, visit grandpa, and sit down and eat their food and have intimate conversation with them.
mhm.
So a lot of these things are happening that are affecting our young people. And I mean, let us keep it real and clean, my friend. Even as adults, because everything now is COVID.
Yeah.
Every symptom there is COVID.
Mhm.
So if you get a warm morning and you cough, it affects your mental stability because you want, oh my God, oh my God, got COVID. Everything there hurts, and you're constantly going on your phone and you're Googling, you're going to Dr. Google and you're repeating
We, we would not entertain that here. We try to advise folks they need to go to their general practitioner. But I know a
but
lot of people are Googling Dr. Google.
you got there before I did. You got there before I did. But the same thing, we already know the symptoms. But as soon as something happens, you want to, is this a symptom of COVID? My hair falling out, is this a symptom of COVID? So
Mhm.
even for us as adults and as professionals who know how to, or who should know how to calm ourselves, who should know how to keep ourselves sane, we are going through the same mental torment.
That's right.
So we can understand that what our children are going through,
Yeah.
the pressures that they face with this pandemic,
Yeah.
and then not knowing when or if it will end.
Oh, Well, we know that
So
something has just been added to it, and it's frightening if it should reach our shores. You know, I mentioned
yes.
earlier that our own West Indian women's team are on their way back home because it's an outbreak in South Africa. So,
Mhm.
you know, you're trying to catch up or play catch up, and at the same time, it just seems as if it's going to be rolling over again, and you're scared, you're anxious, you know, you're kind of numb. You're just trying to figure out, well, what's next, you know. So I remembered, I think, when we had a full shutdown and the ships were in the ocean, one of the crew members, I can't imagine, but she jumped off the ship. I understood.
Yes.
They said that she committed suicide. I guess because being locked up on that ship for so many days, for so long, you accustomed being around, moving and getting out there. Just as the athletes who, how many we had go up the road? I think only 8
Yes.
qualified to even go to the Olympics.
Mhm.
So, how would you recommend at this point? I know it's difficult. It's an unusual question. I'm sure it's a question you've been asked more than once. How can we remain mentally sane? How can we help our children, our friends, our family who are going through this mental withdrawal with what's happening during this pandemic?
Do the things that you enjoy doing.
Hmm.
Find that space, that thing that makes you happy. For
Hmm.
me, I say all the time is social commentary. I love social commentary. So anytime I'm feeling a bit down, I'm feeling depressed, things seems a bit heavy for me, I go and I listen to some Chalker, some Red Plastic Bike, some Gabby, some Gypsy, some Sparrow, some classics, some Ian Webster. I listen to social commentary because that is my pick me upper, so to speak. That
Hmm.
gets me going again. For you, maybe Sister Marshall, Joseph Mills,
Yeah.
watching a comedy, going back and watching Texas Ranger,
Oh, yeah.
doing, doing things that
Good
yes,
time.
I'm not there with you. You lost me there.
You don't remember the good times?
Yeah, of course I
The
remember the good times.
Jeffersons?
But there is a channel still, that show, or those shows that I watch them almost every evening. The Jeffersons, Good Times, Family Matters,
Yes.
uh, Different Strokes, Sanford and Sons. I
Yeah.
still watch those shows because there's something light about those
Yes.
shows. There's something
Yes.
pretty therapeutic about those
Hmm.
shows. And if
Hmm.
you want to relax, if you want to calm down, then a violent movie is not the thing for you to watch.
No. No.
A show that
Avoid
is
some of the
heavy,
news. Avoid some of the
avoid lots of
news.
the news.
Oh, yeah.
Because with the news now, it is COVID, 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 man drowned, COVID, COVID, COVID,
COVID,
COVID,
COVID.
COVID, fire closed down, COVID, 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 COVID. So
Yes.
you cannot
Yes.
get a break
Yeah.
from it. So you do things that you enjoy doing. That's one. Secondly,
Hallmark
you
movies.
lean on family.
Yes.
You communicate, you talk with family daily.
Yes.
Do not be shy to say to a family member, whether male or female, I love you.
Yes. Yes.
Express those feelings openly.
Yes.
And the morning you get up and you don't feel like doing nothing, if you don't have to go to work or whatever, then let them possibly
Yes.
relax yourself. The
Hmm.
world wasn't built in a day. Do things that will rejuvenate you. Do
Hmm.
not try to handle everything. There are things within our power that we can deal with, that we can handle, and there are
Hmm.
things that the Prime Minister puts it best. There are things that you just let along our stump,
Hmm.
and you just let it go like that.
Yes.
There's some that you can contain. There's stuff that you can stroke with, but then there are
Yeah.
others that you just the ball at the passes by.
Yeah.
Do not
Yeah.
try to bite off more than you can
And you
chew.
can choose. Yes. Definitely. Definitely.
Do not pressure yourself because, oh my God, it's like built in. and I pay the water bill here, and the
Oh,
telephone was off touch.
been
You
there,
need
done
the
that.
yes, but don't
Uh,
let that, you know, don't let that get you down. I
yeah.
said, I said in a forum before, and some people agree with me, and some people disagree. But the telephone company or one of the other stores call you continuously reminding you that you ordered money. Yes,
Hmm.
I remember.
Hmm.
I'm not being negligent. The reality is that I cannot afford to pay you at this time. I don't have the means to pay you at this time. And with all due respect, calling me every day and help me get the money any faster.
That is so true, Sean. That is so, so, so true. But
You're
let me
not
tell
being
you,
rude.
yeah, you gotta be frank and be honest with the people and let them know what's happening. We're
And
running
let
out
me
of
know what is
time.
happening.
Yeah,
Hmm.
we're running out of time, and I really know that we have to continue this discussion. It was very heartwarming, and the advice you've given to those who are following, I'm sure they're going to take it to heart. And I want to, as one of our guests, we always remember you as one who contributes to the society. You've given us service, and we want to recognize that you continue to do so to the island and the community in Barbados. And we
Thank you so
commend
much.
you for that because it is important that we recognize you now, you're alive, and don't wait till you go. So
Thank you
if
so
nobody
much.
else has done it, we will do so. And you will receive our own Keeping It Real star. Now, I want to thank Sean for taking the time out to talk with us. We will have another opportunity because I know he was very glad to come on. It's not a
Of
discussion that we
course.
can finish just like that. There's so much that we can talk about. And maybe we would have some folks with us that can even ask him a question or two. So, folks, before we go, remember wear your mask, sanitize, wash your hands, social distance. And you always hear me say, and you heard Sean say, pick up the phone, call a friend or a family. Let them know how much you love them and you care for them. It's important that they can hear your voice and know that you remember them. Follow us on Facebook Live, YouTube, click the link for any notification of the next show. And remember, you're just here keeping it real with Mary and friends. Do have a beautiful day, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye, guys. Thank you so much.